Yeah, with a little bit of rain, particularly by the afternoon, getting through the central belt to Northern Ireland. Late in the day across northern England, but for most of England and Wales, Saturday is going to be a fine day, dry and fine. And after a chilly start, again, some good spells of sunshine lifting the temperatures in the mid to high teens. Again, it will be a little cooler in parts of the east. But that wet weather coming into the far north later on Saturday is from this area of low pressure, which will sink south and so bring a cloudier day on Sunday for England and Wales. And there will be 1 or 2 showers.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle, and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's 2 questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
No spin, no bias, no censorship. I'm Dan Wootton tonight. After Keir Starmer and his Labour cronies spent weeks calling for the Prime Minister to be axed over Partygate, shouldn't the leader of no opposition suffer the same fate if he's found to have breached lockdown rules? I'll take a closer look at the beers with care hypocrisy in my digest next, before I get the thoughts of my superstar panel. Tonight, Conservative commentator Dominic Samuels, former Tory London mayoral candidate Sean Bailey, and author and journalist Amy Nicol. He left one of the world's most successful bands after being cancelled simply for expressing an interest in politics. Now, former Mumford & Sons musician turned podcaster Winston Marshall is here to explain why free speech means more than gold discs and Grammys. I'll talk to one of the world's most influential new commentators live at 10:20. Despite woke hysteria, has Priti Patel's Rwanda scheme already solved the migrant crisis? Former political firebrand Anne Widdecombe breaks down the figures that lefties don't want you to know about in tonight's Big Witty Style at 9:30. As it's revealed, UK jails have become a hotbed of radicalisation due to discussion of Islam becoming a no-go area amongst staff. Just as Dominic Raab takes action against woke language behind bars, have we gone too soft on our prisoners? We'll debate at 10. As Prince Harry says this...
You know, you talk about here in California, I get my therapist to call your therapist. Whereas in the UK, it's like, therapist? What therapist? Whose therapist? I don't have a therapist. No, I've never spoken to a therapist.
Is he right to criticise the British stiff upper lip exemplified by the monarchy? Well, Mark Dolan says keeping calm and carrying on has actually made this country great, and he'll be here as tonight's outsider at 9:45. amid calls for the MP who allegedly viewed X-rated material in the Commons to be given the boot. Should watching porn in the workplace be a sackable offence? It's a formidable lineup for this clash tonight. Columnist and glamour model Jodie Marsh, broadcaster Nicola McLean and former Hollyoaks star Sarah Jane Dunn, who was despicably axed by the soap for joining adult subscription service OnlyFans. They'll battle it out at 9:20. Is ensuring political neutrality the only way to get us to trust social media again? And is that an impossible task? Rapper, author and podcast host Zuby breaks down a seismic week online in Uncancelled at 10:40 plus. Is it fair to ban 16 and 17-year-olds from getting married? And look who's been causing havoc again. Yep, there they are. Just stop oil. Smashing up petrol stations as their campaign of green eco-terrorism continues. Do you know what? I actually think it's their heads that need hammering together. All of that coming up in the Media Buzz at 10:30. And don't forget, I'll bring you a first look at tomorrow's newspapers throughout the show too, and brand new Greatest Britain Union Jackass final ones of the week revealed just before the show is up. This is Dan Wootton tonight. Let's go. Just one thing first, though, an update to an explosive controversy involving Durham University and our very own Rod Liddell. So just to remind you, if you've forgotten, Rod gave a speech at the University South College back in December. It included the words, "It is very easy to prove that the educational underachievement of British people of Caribbean descent or African Americans is nothing to do with institutional or structured racism." Now, some desperately hurt snowflakes walked out midway through that speech, while others failed to applaud at the end, claiming it was racist. The university decided the answer to all of this controversy was mandatory anti-racism training. But that has prompted a massive backlash from the silent majority of sensible students who, surprise, surprise, don't want to pay thousands of pounds to be taught about how they are inherently prejudiced, and slammed the training as anti-white indoctrination. So one of them, Samantha Smith, summed up the mood by saying, "As a mixed race student at Durham, I know that their anti-racism training isn't aimed at myself or my people of colour peers, it's aimed at white people. Stop demonising white students as racists and bigots. They aren't." After Durham performed a U-turn, insisting the training was now at the discretion of individuals, many students have refused to attend, saying, as I'm sure would our dear Rod, that they should be revising for exams instead. So my verdict, woke Durham snowflakes 0, Rod Liddell 1. My digest on the Beers with Care scandal in just a moment. They're my superstar panel here. The political commentator Dominique Samuels, the former Tory London mayoral candidate Sean Bailey, and the author and broadcaster Amy Nicol. But before all of that, keeping you updated tonight, Polly Middlehurst with the headlines.
Dan, thank you. The top story tonight, the first British national named as Scott Sibley and understood to be a British military veteran has been killed in Ukraine. The Foreign Office says it's urgently seeking further information on a second British national who's also missing. They've both been confirmed that the families are being supported. And the UN Secretary-General says civilians in the southern port city of Mariupol in Ukraine need an escape route out of what he calls the apocalypse. That comes as Kyiv Mayor Vitaly Klitschko says 2 explosions have been heard in the city after Russian forces fired at Ukraine's capital. Antonio Guterres has met the Ukrainian president for talks today, as well as visiting the town of Bucha. He says intense discussions are still underway to try to evacuate fighters and civilians from Mariupol.
But the men and women of the United Nations are working every day for the people of Ukraine, side by side with so many brave Ukrainian organizations. They are engaged in an enormously complicated mission under difficult conditions. This is one of the fastest scale-up operations we have ever undertaken, and we are very much aware that not everything is perfect.
Meanwhile, President Zelensky says he believes with the help of the UN, an evacuation of Azovstal plant is possible.
The
most important thing is to see what the UN, can do to unblock Azovstal, to save people's lives. We spent a lot of time discussing this issue, and I trust and believe that the Secretary-General and we all will be able to have a successful result, to have people return alive.
News here at home, and the Prime Minister has called the behaviour of an MP caught watching pornography on his mobile phone in the House of Commons chamber is unacceptable in any workplace. It follows the Labour leader calling for the Conservative Party to take action now against the MP. Boris Johnson says the case would need to go through the appropriate complaints procedure as his chief whip launches an investigation. And the Conservative MP Jamie Wallace has been charged with failing to stop after a car crash in November last year. South Wales police say he's also been charged with failing to report a collision, driving without due care and attention, and leaving a vehicle in a dangerous position on the highway. Wallace recently came out as trans and revealed in a personal statement he was raped and blackmailed. The MP is due to appear before Cardiff Magistrates Court next month. Now, scientists have discovered the best amount of sleep per night needed for those in middle to older age is 7 hours. Cambridge University examined nearly 500,000 adults aged between 38 and 73, and they found for good mental health, memory performance and brain power, 7 hours in bed was found to be ideal. Researchers also found those sleeping for longer or shorter amounts of time reported more symptoms of anxiety or depression. On TV, online and on your radio via DAB+, you are with GB News. And now it's time for Dan Wootton Tonight.
For weeks, Keir Starmer and his Labour cronies have been absolutely insistent that the Prime Minister must resign. He must go. The country must be plunged into chaos in the middle of a European war and a cost of living crisis because his staff presented him with a cake that never left its Tupperware container in 2020.
Was there, then his position's untenable.
We're waiting for the Prime Minister to look into his heart and soul and decide whether or not he has a scrap of human decency in him. Because if he does, he will resign. You, in the end, are the Prime Minister, and you should take responsibility for what you are responsible for. And you should resign. He should resign now. What he really ought to do, if he had any soul, was that he would say, I can't face an ordinary meeting with the Queen. I must go to Buckingham Palace, make a profound apology and resign.
We don't need an investigation. He needs to go.
The Prime Minister has been forced to hand an apology to Her Majesty the Queen. Isn't he ashamed that he didn't hand in his resignation at the same time? So since he acknowledges the ministerial code applies to him, will he now resign? The British public aren't fools. They never believed a word of it. They think the Prime Minister should do the decent thing and resign.
I think he should resign. The ministerial code, which he puts his name on and signs, is very clear. Any minister who knowingly misleads Parliament has to resign.
The ministerial code says that ministers who knowingly mislead the House should resign. Yeah. Why is he still here?
He's broke his own laws and he knows that he should resign.
OK, yep, we get the point. So surely, those same standards must apply to Mr Starmer if the Durham police discover he too broke the lockdown rules a year later. Well, for some reason, the leader of no opposition wouldn't commit to holding himself to the same lofty standards when asked the question by ITV's political editor, Robert Peston, last night.
The Tory MP who want the Durham Constabulary to look again at the beer drinking that you were doing in the City of Durham Labour office on April the 30th, 2021. They think that you breached the COVID rules. You've got anything to hide if the Durham police look at it again?
Well, Robert, I was asked about this very many times in the media several months ago. No rules were broken, and I'd gently point out to Tory MPs that the police have looked into this and established no rules for broken. I understand why they're trying to sling mud just at the moment. But as I say, I don't think there's very much I can add to that.
But just to be absolutely clear, you've said the Prime Minister should resign. In the event, and you say it's highly unlikely, but in the event that you received a fine, you'd obviously resign.
Well, Robert, no rules were broken. And as I said, gently point out, I understand what Tory MPs are doing because of the mess that they're in with the Prime Minister who's not only been found to have broken the law himself, been fined himself for the laws that he made, but over 50 fines for Downing Street, which I think it makes it probably the most fined workplace in the country. So I understand what they're doing, but, you know, as I say, gently point out, the police have looked at this, there were no rules broken, and that really is the end of the matter.
You hope so. But just note there that Keir didn't actually commit to resigning if he is found to have broken the rules. In fact, it's interesting because over the last couple of days, he suddenly doesn't want to talk about Partygate at all. No doubt because much more is emerging about beers with Keir, the event in Hartlepool, that is so obviously worse than anything Boris Johnson got up to while working with his staff at number 10 Downing Street. The Daily Mail revealed a host of sensational details about the event on April the 30th last year, including a 43-second video. So it shows Starmer in the office of Labour MP for the City of Durham, Mary Foy, laughing, chatting to colleagues and, yes, taking swigs from a bottle of beer. Now, apparently, in a total coincidence, Labour officials in the area decided that very night to hold a, quote, quiz and social, an event in which Starmer has denied participating. Now, you'll remember the inhumane and ludicrous rules at the time, which I campaigned against, but Starmer fully embraced, said you must not socialise indoors except with your household or support bubble. Local election workers were also told you should not meet with other campaigners indoors. Meetings to organise and plan campaigns should be held online or over the phone. They should not take place in person. So, as far as I can see, Mr Starmer is bang to rights. Durham's Deputy Chief Constable Karen Irvine has replied to a letter sent by local Tory MP Richard Holden, pledging to speak to investigators about the new information, raising hopes that the case could be reopened. And as the Culture Secretary and Boris loyalist Nadine Dorries said, Keir Starmer has used every trick in the book to attack the PM over his handling of events at number 10. Yet he doesn't want to be held to the same standard the PM has subjected himself to. He's a hypocrite who should fess up to what really happened in Durham and explain why he thinks it's any different to the hyperbole he levelled at the PM. Now, the fact is that Keir Starmer was boozing indoors with his friends, something that was quite clearly banned by the lockdown regulations, which he vigorously supported. He has said this beer swilling took place in between meetings, which means there's zero difference between that incident and Boris being presented a birthday cake. Well, actually, no, there is one difference. Boris and the Chancellor Rishi Sunak didn't drink a drop of booze at the event in question. Of course, this isn't the only example of police, media and political hypocrisy over our leaders and COVID rule breaches. Nicola Sturgeon, you'll remember, was let off by Scottish police earlier this month despite brazenly breaking the mask laws she inflicted on her people. It's become abundantly clear to me that there's one rule when it involves trying to force a democratically elected Prime Minister from office and quite another when it involves leaders of the opposition parties or devolved nations. To respond now, my superstar panel, the political commentator Dominique Samuels, the former Tory London mayoral candidate Sean Bailey and the author and broadcaster Amy Nicol. Now, Dominique, I need to start by saying, as I always say when I'm talking about this topic, I think the rules were an ass. The rules should not have been in place whatsoever. They were impossible to follow. They were inhumane and they didn't even work. But here's the thing, Dominique. Keir Starmer signed up to the rules. In fact, he did more than sign up for the rules. He was always demanding that the Prime Minister and the Tory party go harder. He wanted stricter lockdowns. He wanted more restrictions. And I'm sorry, you can see in that video he didn't follow the rules. So what's different between that and Boris Johnson receiving a cake from his staff members at number 10 Downing Street? What is different?
I think in that particular instance, there's not really that much of a big difference. And if it is found that Keir Starmer did indeed break the rules or he is given a fine, I think, as I've said for the Prime Minister. I think he should indeed resign.
Well, look, there he is, indoors, downing beer. Downing beer indoors.
But to play devil's advocate here, I think that the difference that you can highlight is the fact that the Prime Minister is said to have been involved in not just the birthday cake incident, but like 5 other ones, including an ABBA party that was in his flat, and then there was another one, the Bring Your Own Booze one, which, to be fair to him, he said he attended for just a few minutes, so that does indicate a lack of judgment. But I think in private, our elected officials have probably not been following the rules, and that's the point. If you're going to impose such life-changing measures that restrict people's daily lives, you should be following them to the letter. And
of course,
that
because Sean, you know, you were in a very similar situation, and you held your hands up. You have had a professional cost. You've resigned from one job as a result of it. Starmer is demanding a particular standard from the Tory party, which he isn't prepared to meet himself.
I've only 2 things to say. I wasn't in lockdown when this incident happened. It happened for me.
Exactly.
But the point is this: Starmer needs to deal with this earlier. The fact that he wouldn't commit to resigning is the issue. If he's found guilty or not is for me is a separate issue. He's been very careful, painstakingly, with a number of Labour MPs saying you must go, you must go. Yeah. He must commit to going. We shouldn't even have to ask him to go. Yeah. He should come up and say, "I'm."
But he didn't, Sean.
I know, and that's the point. And this is where the public will see 2 important things. One, he's a hypocrite. I said very early on, this is a hypocrisy in action, and it's a witch hunt. Now the public, no matter which side of the fence you sit on, can see that it was just a witch hunt. Yeah. And the second thing is, Starmer has nothing else to speak about. We are facing big issues as a country, and all he can speak about is Partygate. We want to know about cost of living crisis. We want to know about economic migrants. We want to know about European war. We want to know what he's going to do about our income. He has no answer to those things.
He does.
That's why
he has plenty of
he
answers
does not.
to
That's
those
why he's
things.
only ever spoken about Partygate.
Plenty of answers. All people want to ask him about is Partygate.
No, Amy, that's not true. At PMQs, he has a choice, and until this Durham thing reared its ugly head, all he wanted to talk about was Partygate.
Yeah. So if he drank the beer.
Well, he did. We just saw it.
So give him a £50
no, did you
fine.
see it with your own eyes?
So
I've just played it to you.
I think most people are entitled to make one mistake, right? Boris has made 300 mistakes. He has lied systematically, habitually. He lied to the Queen, even. This is not the cake. Well, we don't... The cake symbolises everything
we
that's
don't
gone
know.
before. We sat here the night that they came up that story, that they wheeled that suitcase into Co-op every week throughout the pandemic, and we were shocked and disgusted, and that was on the eve of Prince Philip's memorial. We sat here and we knew how disgusting it was.
Hold on.
You can't
Yes, you can. Let's draw a contrast. Hold on. We've had months and months of Keir Starmer leading the Labour Party on a charge the whole time knowing he was at this event, the whole time knowing the party done other things. That's the thing.
He did exactly the same thing. I mean, Amy, look. Amy, I want to ask you a question. Look at this. Is that someone working? He's standing up, he's chatting to his mates, he's downing beer. Is that work?
Dan,
just answer the question, is that someone working?
I thought you were better than this. That's a man in an office having a break, right? If you want to talk about law breaking, can we talk about law breaking and what has happened with the situation with 39,000 people dying unnecessarily because of what has happened in the care homes?
Hold on.
That has been proven to be unlawful.
What did I start my show with last night? What did I interview Matt Hancock about for 30 minutes last week as part of my lockdown inquiry? But I'm sorry, hypocrisy matters. And what I'm seeing is that Sturgeon gets away with breaking the rules. What I'm seeing... No, she did twice. What I'm seeing is that Starmer gets away with breaking the rules. Yet there is a campaign. There is a campaign to get Boris out of office for doing exactly the same thing.
You're deluded if you keep forgiving Boris for all these systematic, habitual
I'm not forgiving him for
unlawful things constantly.
I mean, I'm not forgiving him for anything, actually. I have been very clear that Boris Johnson did make mistakes with his running of Number 10 during the pandemic. He's admitted that himself. But I don't believe it's a resignation offence. I don't believe the country should be plunged into chaos. Exactly, and I think that's completely fair enough.
I mean, for me, it's just the gaslighting. We can see in that video that you knocking back a beer is not you working strenuously with your colleagues. The same with the garden party that wasn't investigated by the police, with the cheese and the wine and the pizza. That's just gaslighting because the rules said that we couldn't do the same thing.
Exactly, but if Keir Starmer is going to call on Boris to resign,
he should be clear about that.
Then he has to say that he would go for the same thing.
Yeah, and I think the reason why he probably doesn't feel compelled to do that is because he knows that A, he's on the left, and B, the media like Keir Starmer, let's be quite honest, and C, the public are probably fatigued. I mean, we know the public are fatigued already talking about Partygate.
And I'm fatigued
so
by
if there's
Partygate.
another rolling news
and
story,
I'm fatigued by Partygate.
it might not get the same level.
But it goes deeper than that. This isn't about only how the public perceive it. It's about what he said. He was the one who laid out what he thought was clearly the rules on what should happen. So, therefore, he must be subject to
And
what
I
he
showed that
believes.
to you. I completely agree. Sean Bailey, Dominic Samuels, Amy Nicole, my superstar panel, and they are here all night. But coming up, as 0 migrants cross the channel for 8 days, has Priti Patel's ingenious Rwanda scheme already solved the illegal migrant crisis? Political firebrand Anne Widdecombe advocated for a similar plan in the 1990s, and she's here to break down those figures that lefties don't want you to know about. But up next, amid calls for the MP who allegedly viewed X-rated material in the Commons to be given the boot, should watching porn in the workplace be a sackable offence? It's a formidable lineup for this clash tonight. Columnist and glamour model Jodie Marsh, broadcaster Nicola McLean, and former Hollyoaks star Sarah Jane Dumble. What do you think about this one? To be honest, such a grim topic, isn't it? But we've got to talk about it. Dan at gbnews.uk. Tweet me at gbnews. We've got a poll running there too. The results after the break.
Good evening, Alex Deacon here with your latest weather update from the Met Office. Another dry day for the vast majority tomorrow, probably a bit sunnier for many of us, and as a result, feeling a little warmer as well. This area of high pressure has been controlling our weather for most of this week. There are signs of weather fronts getting closer for the weekend, more on that in a moment, but for the time being, high pressure promising a dry night for the vast majority, just the small chance of 1 or 2 showers over the Northern Isles and perhaps later in the night across the southeast of England. Certainly eastern parts of England keeping a fair bit of cloud, but for many we'll have largely clear skies. And again, it will be pretty fresh in the morning. Temperatures well down into single figures, and in rural parts of northern England, Northern Ireland, southern Scotland, there will be a frost, maybe as low as -2 or -3. So yes, a cold start to Friday, but for quite a few of us it will be a sunny start to what will be a fine spring day. Again, eastern England's mostly staying cloudy, particularly East Anglia and increasingly across the southeast with maybe 1 or 2 showers, but also eastern Scotland seeing some cloud bubbling up and the odd shower here and there. And again, eastern areas, temperatures struggling a little bit, 12, 13 at best, but in the sunshine further west, many places up to 16, 17, maybe 18 Celsius in western Scotland. Quite quickly, temperatures dropping away through tomorrow evening. So again, turning quite cold as we head into the weekends with largely clear skies and a touch of frost. We are going to see a change for Scotland and Northern Ireland on Saturday. More clouds spilling in here with a little bit of rain, particularly by the afternoon, getting through the central belt to Northern Ireland. Late in the day across Northern England, but for most of England and Wales, Saturday is going to be a fine day, dry and fine. And after a chilly start, again, some good spells of sunshine lifting the temperatures in the mid to high teens. Again, it will be a little cooler in parts of the east. But that wet weather coming into the far north later on Saturday is from this area of low pressure, which will sink south and so bring a cloudier day on Sunday for England and Wales. And there will be 1 or 2 showers.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's 2 questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Mark Dolan and Anne Widdecombe coming up, but first, time for The Clash. Now, the Prime Minister has lashed out at one of his own MPs accused of watching pornography in the Houses of Commons, slamming it as totally unacceptable behaviour. Following extraordinary allegations made by two female MPs at a meeting with senior party figures on Tuesday evening, at which a string of sexism claims were voiced, Boris has hinted the man in question faces being kicked out of the party.
Well, I think it's obviously unacceptable for anybody to be doing that kind of thing in the workplace. It would be the same for any kind of job up and down the country. Let's be absolutely clear about that. What needs to happen now is that the proper procedures need to be gone through. Yeah, I mean, this is clearly, that kind of behaviour is clearly totally unacceptable.
Parliament's Independent Complaints and Grievance Scheme is looking into the accusations regarding the unnamed MP who is not believed to be a minister, but until its findings are complete, the Tory whip doesn't look like it will be removed. So, with furious condemnation mounting, should watching porn in the workplace be a sackable offence? Dan at gbnews.uk, tweet me at gbnews and vote in our Twitter poll. But weighing in on this now, the columnist and glamour model Jodie Marsh, the broadcaster Nicola McLean, and former Hollyoaks star Sarah Jane Dunn, who despicably got axed from the soap for joining adult subscription service OnlyFans. So, Sarah Jane, let me start with you. Is it sackable? Should you be sacked if you watch this sort of X-rated content at work?
I think the question is, why was he on his phone in the first place? Why wasn't he paying attention? I think it's less the context of what he was watching. I wonder whether there would be as much outrage on this if he was scrolling through Instagram or watching football or, sending a message to somebody. I think the fact is that, yes, it's unacceptable, but you need to look further into what he was doing and why he wasn't paying attention. He's supposed to be sat there paying attention and helping run the country, and actually he's sat there watching porn, or what we understand, whoever has reported it was offended by it, but we don't actually know the context of what the images or the videos were either.
Jodie Marsh, great to have you. Do you think this is a sackable offence?
Absolutely. And actually, I think it's more than what Sarah just said, because I think it's if you're using work time and you're being paid to do a job and you're using that time to do something for yourself that's private, if you're scrolling through Instagram, you shouldn't be doing that either. But it's pretty harmless, yeah? If you're watching porn at work, I think you've got an issue, if I'm quite honest. Because I think if you can't get through the day without having to watch porn or have a WAN, I don't know if we can say the word.
No, please don't. Please, God, don't.
But do you understand? If you can't get through the day at work without doing that, then you have got an issue. Please. I mean... And actually, as a woman, if I found out that I was working alongside a man that was watching porn at work, sitting next to me at the desk or whatever, I'd actually feel quite grossed out by that. I'd be like, is that all you think about all day long? Are you looking at me like that? Are you looking at other women like that in the office? I just think that it's too much. It's too much.
It's definitely unprofessional, I understand. Nicola McLean, the only thing that I was thinking about this, and by the way, I'm not excusing it for a single second, but Jodie mentions Instagram, right? And there is a lot of content on Instagram. There's also a lot of content on OnlyFans, the service that Sarah Jane is on, which actually, you know, you might say it's a little bit saucy, people in bikinis, that sort of thing. And there's quite a fine line, isn't there, between what could be considered inappropriate?
Well, I totally disagree, and I've actually stood up for Sarah. I hope she's seen it. I actually believe what she's done is right. I don't believe that a person in Parliament should be looking at Sarah's OnlyFans, Jodie Marsh's Instagram, my Instagram. I don't believe they should. He's, with all that's going on in the world, he should not be looking at anybody in that way. He clearly... He's not looking at the job in hand, he's looking at another job in hand, and I don't think that's acceptable on any level. I just think that go to the toilet if you need to do that. Why are you sitting next to people and looking at porn? It's absolutely ridiculous.
It's creepy, isn't it?
I think
it's creepy.
Clearly is a sexual deviant that's going to go on to do something else, because I have no problem with porn, but I've never gone to work and sat next to someone and looked at it.
No, it's creepy. It's like the creeps that look at it on the bus or the train or something, because they sort of get off on it. But Sarah Jane Dunn, do you feel any concern about this man? Because there's rumours that he could be named as soon as this weekend. I mean, this will ruin his life, won't it, this revelation?
Yeah, again, I go back to, I mean, again, I am not approving it or saying that, I agree with what's happened at all. And I feel the same as girls. You know, if that was me, I would feel very uncomfortable if someone was sat next to me looking to inappropriate material, and especially in that environment where he should be concentrating, he should be working, any workplace. However, again, we don't know what that material is. Whoever's reported it finds that offensive. It might be a picture of a girl in a bikini. Again, not acceptable, but it might be as innocent as that and scrolling on Twitter or whatever.
But Sarah Jane, is that unacceptable, though? I mean, is that unacceptable? Seriously, any time I open up my Instagram account, I can almost guarantee I'm going to see a woman, a friend of mine, in a bikini. And I could open up my Instagram account on a train or in a workplace. Do you see what I mean? That's where I'm just thinking that there is a fine line.
Is it? And I think that's where, again, like, it's how do you can't sack someone yet without knowing all of that information. It's certainly suspension and warning and, find out more information about it. But like you say, you can open up your phone and these images come up. It's more about the question of why was he even looking at his phone, regardless of the content that was on there. His phone shouldn't have even been in his hand.
And Jodie Marsh, it does feel like increasingly that Westminster is a bit of a cesspit when it comes to this sort of thing. Female MPs talking about being treated appallingly on both sides of the aisle, by the way. Labour MPs reporting over the past 24 hours that a senior frontbencher said to one female MP, "Oh yeah, you're really good because women want to be your friend and men want to sleep with you." Do you think that those sort of sexualised comments need to be stamped out in 2022, or do you worry that we're becoming too po-faced?
I don't really think that's acceptable in Parliament. I think that these are the people that are running our country. These are people that are making huge decisions for all of us and that affect all of our lives. And so I think that genuinely they need to be more professional and less sexist, and there needs to be less misogyny. I don't think the country's being run particularly well at the moment. I think there's been lots of mistakes. As you talked about earlier, I was watching your interviews before us three came on, and, you make some very good points. I think it's just ridiculous how many mistakes are being made at the moment. We've got no faith or trust in these people anymore. Just going back to the porn thing, though, I do think that, again, Nicola and Sarah Jane are completely right that you shouldn't be looking at your phone anyway in work, right? My boyfriend always jokes that if he goes to the toilet when he's at work, he says he'll phone me from sitting on the toilet and he'll say, I'm being paid to take a dump. Right? And we laugh because it's true. He's having a dump on work time and he's being paid for it, right? So he jokes. He says, I'm being paid to take a dump. Well, that's funny, right? But we have to go to the toilet during work. That can't be helped. If you're looking at your phone, which you shouldn't be anyway, I do think there's a massive difference between having a quick scroll through Instagram, whether there's sexy images on there or not, or purposely going to a porn site to watch porn, right? Now, unless you're looking at Sarah Jane's OnlyFans or my OnlyFans, I've got OnlyFans as well, or unless you're looking at Nicola's Instagram, then those three things are totally acceptable, by the way. But joking aside, like, you know, you shouldn't be seeking out pornography while you're at work. That is creepy and weird. And I don't care who you are, you know, even more so if you're a politician, because you are supposed to be looking after our country. You are supposed to be making big decisions for us.
And I completely understand that, Jodie. I guess, Nicola, the point that I was getting at is, are we risking entering a territory where men become too scared to say anything because they're worried about being told off? Because maybe that Labour MP who made that jibe thought he was making a joke, thought he was giving that female MP a compliment.
No, because I don't think it is a compliment, and I don't have OnlyFans, but I subscribe to the girls because they do, and that's great, and I'm all for it, and I'm big fans of both of them. But no, I don't. I think that there's a time and a place, you know. I don't think it's okay what we're seeing at the minute and the misogyny that we're seeing. I don't agree with it, and I don't agree with a politician sitting in Parliament, whether they're looking at a picture of me in my bikini that I might be on holiday on Instagram, or whether they're going to the girls' OnlyFans. It's not appropriate. It's really not.
Because they should be representing their constituents. No, I understand. Well, fascinating debate. Thank you so much for having it. That is the broadcaster, Nicola Klein, the columnist and glamour model, Jodie Marsh, and former Hollyoaks star, Sarah Jane Dunn. So who do you agree with on this? Well, Nick on Twitter says there's no place for porn anywhere outside greasy people's VHS players. From Alex on Twitter, there's a time and a place for that kind of thing, and the workplace certainly isn't that place. I'd give them a warning first, but if it happens again, then it's goodbye. And from Lisa, yes, it's a sackable offence. It's highly inappropriate. And your verdict is now into 70% of you agree with Nicola and Jodie that watching porn in the workplace should be a sackable offence. 30% of you say it shouldn't be. My goodness, I hope this story doesn't go on for another day. I'm going to admit, don't like talking about it. It's grubby. Coming up, is Prince Harry right to criticise the British stiff upper lip exemplified by the monarchy as he gushes about the Californian approach to mental health? Or Mark Dolan takes aim at the snowflake Duke in The Outsider at 9:45. And despite woke hysteria, is Priti Patel's Rwanda plan already solving the migrant crisis? Anne Widdecombe gives her unmissable analysis next.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GBNews.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Mark Dolan and Zuby on the way, but time now for Big Witty Style with Anne Widdecombe. And what a coincidence. 2 weeks after Priti Patel announced her Rwanda plan to deal with the Channel migrant crisis, guess how many boats have attempted the perilous trip across the past 8 days? The answer? None. Zilch. Nada. Can you believe this? Official data from the Ministry of Defence shows there have been no boats, no crossings and no lives risked since April the 20th, just days after the Home Secretary first announced the plan. By comparison, last year, there were an average of 78 migrants a day crossing from France to England as politicians and ministers sat twiddling their thumbs. It is, of course, early days and crossings can be impacted by the weather, but it would appear for now the Rwanda deterrent is working just as Priti Patel planned. And just to be clear, you wouldn't have heard about the sudden and complete eradication of dinghies and boats destined for Britain from the hysterical mainstream media and woke craze left. Their only contribution to the migrant crisis has been calling the Home Secretary a racist, lazy xenophobe, while failing to actually offer any alternative. So, Anne, these numbers, I know it's early days, but they're positive. Do you think Priti Patel's Rwanda plan is already stemming the chaos?
Oh, yes, and I don't know why it took so long to come up with it. As I think I've said before on this programme, I propose that we should detain all new asylum seekers. Oliver Letwin took it a stage further when he succeeded me and suggested that we should have them processed offshore. And that was 20 years ago. And if it had been done then, it would have been solved a long time ago. But never mind, better late than never. It's happening now. And I don't think President Macron will be too happy, because if they're not coming here, presumably they're staying in Calais.
Of course, this was the Australian experience, Anne, when Tony Abbott introduced the very controversial policy to stop the boats. Literally, within 2 years, their numbers also went down to zero.
Well, I mean, it just stands to reason. It's not rocket science that if you think you're going to end up in a country from which you're most unlikely to be removed, and it's a country with a flourishing underground economy, that is going to be an attraction. But if you think you're going to end up somewhere in Africa, that is perhaps not quite such an attraction. And so it just stands to reason that this was always going to be a deterrent. And I would now like Keir Starmer to stand up in Parliament and congratulate Boris on, at last, 20 years after it was suggested, on getting this done.
Well, Anne, given you've just mentioned Keir Starmer, I want to play you, actually, his reaction after Boris Johnson announced the plan 2 weeks ago. Have a look, Anne, and I'll get you to react off the back.
I think we need to see these plans for what they are. It's a desperate announcement by a Prime Minister who just wants to distract from his own law-breaking. I think it's a desperate announcement. The true aim of this is just to distract from the law-breaking of the Prime Minister. The problem with the plan today is that it is absolutely desperate.
So what's Labour's plan for immigration? How would you end the Channel crisis?
Well, we've been saying for some time that we need to have joined-up arrangements with our partners in France. We need a much better Home Office streamlining of applications, but there's no getting away from this today. This is a desperate attempt by the Prime Minister.
So, Anne, he was reeling off his prepared lines. He had no alternative.
No, He had no alternative whatsoever. And talking about the Prime Minister's law breaking, I can't help observing that he is now being investigated for breaking the law in exactly the same way as the Prime Minister did, and producing exactly the same reason for his conduct, which is that he thought it was a work event. So that's karma, and that's really well-deserved. But he had no option. We have had no options. As I say, over the last 20 years, we've had no sensible option. And the idea, Keir Starmer standing there saying, we must cooperate with France. We paid them millions, and still the migrants came.
Exactly, and it's delusional, isn't it, Anne, for Keir Starmer to think that President Macron will have some great change of heart because he's negotiating with a Labour Prime Minister. He won't.
No, I mean, the issue for Macron is not whether the Prime Minister is Conservative or Labour. It's the fact that the Prime Minister is British. And Macron doesn't like us, and he likes us even less since Brexit. And as I say, we've already tried cooperation. We paid huge sums of money to France to stem the flow, and they just didn't. And if anything, the flow got worse.
And look, I completely agree with you that it has taken too long to introduce this policy. But should we now give credit to Priti Patel? Because you've got to think that she has been dealing with a Home Office blob that has been determined to stop her going for a plan like this.
Oh, yes. I mean, there's no doubt that you give credit to Priti Patel and you give credit to the Cabinet, because they would have had to agree it. And once again, I think what we've seen is a government that really does solve issues. Boris cut through the Brexit nonsense. He didn't get the sort of Brexit I wanted because of Northern Ireland, but at least he delivered some sort of Brexit. He delivered the most successful vaccination programme in all Europe. He's now delivered an answer to a problem that looked insoluble, and if you believe the opposition was insoluble. So congratulations to all of them. Yeah.
Indeed. And look, it's only 8 days so far. There's a long way to go, but I think this is a very positive sign. It's interesting, Anne, isn't it? No coverage of this on the BBC, ITV News, Sky News. No coverage whatsoever.
But you can bet that if the numbers had gone up, we would have got, extensive coverage. They don't like good news, I'm afraid. The mainstream media do not like good news. So, GBNews should just start giving them some, and they might find the nation likes it.
Indeed. Well, we will. Anne Widdecombe, thank you so much, Anne. We'll speak next week.
Thank you.
But coming up, as Dominic Raab locks woke words like client instead of inmate out of prison amid claims our jails have become a hotbed of radicalisation. Have we become too soft on prisoners? My superstar panel return to debate that in the Media Buzz at 10, and we'll have a first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages too. But first, is the Prince of Woke right to criticise the British stiff upper lip approach exemplified by his grandma? Mark Dolan says keeping calm and carrying on has made this country great. He's our outsider, and he's next.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GBNews.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
A first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages in just a moment. But first, Mark Dolan is tonight's outsider. Now, the keep calm and carry on attitude exemplifies our monarchy, and in many ways it's made this country great. But in yet another example of the king of hypocrisy, Prince Harry, attacking Britain and the royal family, he has now slammed the stiff upper lip approach used by ordinary folk in the UK to get by. Remember when he brazenly advised mere mortals stuck in jobs that don't bring them joy to quit? Well, he's dishing out the advice again, and this time he's telling us to, just get a therapist.
Dedicated to the cause of improving mental health outcomes. But in the UK in particular, it was sometimes an uphill battle.
Read about the cultural differences. They're immense. You talk about here in California, I'll get my therapist to call your therapist. Whereas in the UK, it's like, therapist? What therapist? Whose therapist? I don't have a therapist. No, I've never spoken to a therapist. 99.9% of people on planet Earth are suffering from some form of loss, trauma, or grief. It doesn't matter what age you are, but the majority of us have experienced a lot of that in our younger years. Therefore, we've forgotten about it.
So that was Harry speaking in his job as Chief Impact Officer with San Francisco-based Uberwoke £4 billion executive coaching business Better Up. Mark Dolan, has there ever been a better illustration of a member of the royal family being so woefully out of touch with the lives of ordinary Brits who can we just remind him, Mark, are in the midst of a massive cost of living crisis? I mean, does he have any idea how much therapy costs?
I'll get your therapist to call my therapist. How much does a therapist cost? 100 quid an hour, probably. And in Hollywood, 1,000 quid an hour and the rest. It seems like Prince Harry, Dan, is competing with Prince Andrew to be the world's most unpopular prince. I've got post-traumatic stress disorder listening to that nonsense. He actually said that he'd been around soldiers recently, and he, quote, started to realise parts of my own story were being mirrored or reflected in that. Now, he's talking about soldiers coming back from war, literally shaking with fear from what they've been through. This guy needs to get over himself. As you rightly said, another attack on Britain from the luxury of his Montecito mansion. It's an insult. And by the way, I think therapy, of course, if you've been through a trauma, anyone watching this program should reach out because help is always there. But this obsession with therapy is now an industry. And of course, Dan, an industry that Prince Harry is part of. As you said, he was there representing Better Up, a coaching and mental health company who are paying him a fortune.
Exactly. This is all about lining his own pockets, Mark. Absolutely agree with that. I think what I find particularly frustrating about his comments is the fact that he always has to make an anti-Britain dig, and he also has to make an anti-royal family dig. And I think what is so crass about it, Mark, is you think about the two royals who in recent times have best exemplified the stiff upper lip approach, and it's the Queen and it's Prince Philip, his grandmother and his grandfather, who he keeps telling us he adores. Well, Harry, stop slagging them off in public.
Well, you're absolutely right. And I think that stiff upper lip is the best thing about this country because, obviously, if there are problems in your life, you talk to people. But I think now that we've essentially reared a generation who are obsessed with their mental health. And I think there's a very big difference between a major trauma or severe clinical depression and just feeling a bit unhappy. And unfortunately, Prince Harry appears to be the king of the snowflake generation. And I don't think that these comments about the royal family and about Britain are acceptable, given the fact that he has left. He's in America. Why does he continue to lob these poison arrows in our direction? And how dare he criticise the monarchy and the royal family whilst hanging on to those titles of Duke and Duchess of Sussex? He's not the Duke of Sussex. He's the Duke of hypocrisy.
Well, indeed. And Mark, look, 100%, I agree with you. If you want to get therapy, if you think that is going to help you, absolutely fine. But he's talking about a approach, a country approach, a philosophy. And I just think, let's look at members of the royal family. So the Queen and Prince Philip lived through World War II, part of our greatest generation. The Queen was in London as Buckingham Palace was bombed. Now, the pair of them, as far as we know, never had therapy in their lives. Then you look at the royals who had a lot of therapy. Fergie, Harry's mother Diana, Harry himself, and they're messed up. I mean, all I'm saying is that it doesn't work for everyone, and actually, for some people, the stiff upper lip approach is best.
Well, that's right. And if you look at California, where everyone's got a therapist, they're all bonkers, Dan. And I loved your piece in the Mail Online. I read your columns religiously in the Mail Online, and you wrote about Harry. And, well, because it's compelling journalism and it's suffused with the truth. And you actually pointed out, because I think that in your heart, you've got deep sympathy for this guy. Yes. We all loved Harry. He was a carefree, fun-loving national treasure. I think second only to the Queen in terms of popularity back in the day.
Yes.
He was, wasn't he? He was just, such a character. He liked to drink. He was a bit naughty. And he was a dashing young prince. But he gave all of that up when he fell in love with the Princess of Woke, the woman that broke up the royal band, Yoko Ono herself, Meghan Markle. He hasn't been the same since then. But as you pointed out in that article, you said that you genuinely don't think this guy's happy. And I think that was really perceptive. And, the bottom line is that notwithstanding our criticism of this couple and their hypocrisy and, frankly, their lies at times, we want them to be happy. They've got two gorgeous kids. She's a very beautiful woman and he's an international celebrity. But the negativity, the toxicity, the backbiting, it's unseemly, it's unjustified, and it's unfair. But I think the root of it, as you say in that article, is that he's not happy. So therefore, all this therapy is not working, and he should ask for his money back.
Mark, I think you're completely right, and it's very important to raise it, actually. Since Prince Harry has entered into this toxic relationship with Meghan, since she's come in and literally wrestled him away from his blood relatives, wrestled him away from those people who got him through those really difficult years, including his brother, Prince William, and his sister-in-law, Kate, who were such important figures in his life. Since that happened, Mark, he has been incredibly low, incredibly unhappy. And I really do think there's a connection there. I think Meghan has come in like a wrecking ball and she said, you don't need anyone else. You don't need these people from your former life. You only need me. And she has indoctrinated him with this woke mumbo-jumbo. And I believe we've got a very unhappy prince as a result. But Mark, just quickly, you're obviously here Friday, Saturday, Sunday. What do you have coming up for us?
Well, I'm very excited because we're going to debate marriage. You know that the age of marriage is going up to 18 in England and Wales. We'll ask whether marriage is still a good idea, Dan, and we'll be asking the Hamiltons and the Crankies all in one particular slot on the show. So that's going to be a mega interview. Can't wait for that.
Goodness me, Mark Dolan here, 9 p.m. tomorrow night. Mark, thank you so much. It's 10 p.m. I'm Dan Wootton. Tonight, as it's revealed, UK jails have become a hotbed of radicalisation due to discussion of Islam becoming a no-go area among staff. Just as Dominic Raab takes action against woke language behind bars, have we gone too soft on prisoners? I'll debate that next with my superstar panel, the Conservative commentator Dominic Samuels, former Tory London mayoral candidate Sean Bailey, and journalist and author Amy Nicol. Hysteria over his interest in politics forced him to walk away from one of the world's most successful bands. Now, former Mumford & Sons musician Winston Marshall is ready to speak out on giving up fame to protect free speech after launching an influential new podcast. He joins me in 20 minutes. Is ensuring political neutrality the only way to get us to trust social media again? And actually, is that just an impossible task, even for Elon Musk? Well, rapper, author and podcast host Zuby breaks down what has been a seismic week online and uncancelled at 10:40 plus. As Mark Dolan just mentioned, is it fair to ban 16 and 17-year-olds from getting married? And what caused all this chaos at a photo opportunity for newly elected Emmanuel Macron? I'll reveal that and much more as the Media Buzz continues at 10:30. Your first look at tomorrow's newspapers coming up next too, as well as throughout the next hour. And it's Jamila Jamil versus Jacob Rees-Mogg. That's a pairing I never thought we'd see in tonight's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass coronation at 10:50. But before all of that, the news headlines with Polly Middlehurst.
Dan, thank you. The top stories tonight. The first British national named as Scott Sibley and understood to be a British military veteran has been killed in Ukraine. The Foreign Office today saying it's urgently seeking further information on a second British national who's missing. They've confirmed both families are currently being supported. More on that story when we get it. Meanwhile, the UN Secretary-General says civilians in Mariupol in Ukraine need an escape route out of what he's calling an apocalypse. Antonio Guterres has met with the Ukrainian president today for talks, as well as visiting the town of Bucha. He says intense discussions are still underway to evacuate fighters and civilians from the southeastern city of Mariupol.
But the men and women of the United Nations are working every day for the people of Ukraine, side by side with so many brave Ukrainian organizations. They are engaged in an enormously complicated mission under difficult conditions. This is one of the fastest scale-up operations we have ever undertaken, and we are very much aware that not everything is perfect.
Meanwhile, President Zelensky of Ukraine says he believes, with the help of the United Nations, an evacuation of the Azovstal plant is possible.
The most important thing is to see what the UN, can do to unblock Azovstal, to save people's lives. We spent a lot of time discussing this issue, and I trust and believe that the Secretary-General and we all will be able to have a successful result, to have people return alive.
And today, in the west of the country, 2 blasts have hit Ukraine's capital. Ukrainian officials say Russia has fired 2 missiles in Kiev this evening, with one of them striking the lower floors of a residential building. They say at least 3 people have been taken to hospital. More on that as we get it. Meanwhile, here, the Prime Minister has called the behaviour of an MP allegedly caught watching pornography on his phone in the House of Commons unacceptable in any workplace. It follows the Labour leader calling for the Conservative Party to take action now against the MP. Boris Johnson says the case would need to go through the appropriate complaints procedure, as well as his chief whip launching an investigation. The Conservative MP Jamie Wallis has been charged with failing to stop after a car crash in November last year. South Wales police say he's also been charged with failing to report a collision, driving without due care and attention, and leaving a vehicle in a dangerous position on the highway. Wallis recently came out as trans and revealed in a personal statement he'd been raped and blackmailed. The MP is due to appear before Cardiff Magistrates Court next month. And Her Majesty the Queen was hosting a face-to-face meeting today with the Swiss president. Posing with Ignacio Cassis and his wife, Paula, Her Majesty was photographed without her walking stick. The monarch has returned to Windsor Castle after spending last week at her Sandringham estate in Norfolk. On TV, online and on your radio via DAB+. You're with GB News. Now more from Dan Wootton tonight.
Time for tomorrow's news tonight now on our Media Buzz. First front pages in, let's get straight to it. The Metro, leading with the story we just heard from Polly. The first known UK casualty of the Ukrainian war is father of two, Scott Sibley. Another British Army veteran is missing in action too. There's also this juicy showbiz row that saw Harry Styles' director-girlfriend Olivia Wilde sensationally served with custody papers relating to her separation from ex-partner Ted Lasso star Jason Sudeikis while she was on stage in a crowd of 4,000 people. God, they are vile in Hollywood, aren't they? What absolutely horrible people. Although, that is a great way to get revenge on your ex who's just started to go out with Harry Styles. I mean, you must hate that, right? Although, I'd say Jason Sudeikis, I mean, he's very successful. I like Ted Lasso, so he's doing OK himself. My superstar panel back with me now, political commentator Dominique Samuels, former Tory London mayoral candidate Sean Bailey, and the author and broadcaster Amy Nicol. Now, woke language has infiltrated our prisons and is damaging public confidence in the criminal justice system, according to Dominic Raab. The Justice Secretary has sent a new style guide to all prison and probation service staff, instructing them to avoid using the word room when referring to cells. It also says that prisoners released from jail shouldn't be called service users or clients, but prison leavers, people leaving prison, people resettling in communities, and ex-offenders. Now, John McLaughlin, there he is, head of HMP Five Wells in Wellingborough, dubbed England's softest jail, has previously said he calls inmates residents to build their self-esteem. But Raab wants prisoners to lock away the wishy-washy language as he fears the spread of politically correct fads inside jails risks wrecking public confidence in law and order policies. Now, that spread of political correctness, by the way, is also paralysing prison staff in our fight against homegrown extremism. I'm very worried about this. So the terrorism watchdog yesterday warned that Muslim terrorists have seized control of prison wings because staff fear being accused of racism if they intervene. Extremists have set up Sharia courts behind bars to deliver punishments such as flogging and made insincere allegations of racism and Islamophobia when challenged by staff, the watchdog said. They have also gone unchallenged when insisting that prison staff were barred from attending Friday prayers because they were not Muslim. Now, Raab has pledged to take back control of prisons from Islamist inmates who use cultural and religious sensitivities to exert control by giving staff regular training and significantly expanding the use of separation centres to protect the rest of the prison population from radicalisation. But Sean Bailey, this seems to me like you've got wokeism on one side, then you've got extremism rife in our jails as well, which could actually be combined a really serious threat to national security. We've got to sort this out.
I think actually the wokeism makes extremism much more likely to happen because people will be afraid of challenging people. But let's be very clear about this. Prison is always a tough gig because you're trapped between having to provide punishment and also rehabilitation, and the only way you can do that is if you keep control. So I think the steps that Dominic Raab are talking about are a good start, but actually you could probably go further. And they do need to be able to say to people, actually, you are allowed to practice your faith in jail. I'm a man of faith. I think it's something that people should be able to do, but we are allowed to observe and we can step in because you've committed a crime, you've given up some of your rights here, and we will not let the wrong things happen in jail because they have a direct impact on what happens outside of jail. So you must keep control.
Come on, we can't have Sharia law being practised in prisons.
Exactly, it's completely ridiculous. And that's because there are high numbers of prisoners that go into prison not for anything related to terrorism or extremism. They're then apprehended by the groups that are running the jails. They then convert and realise when you're a part of those extremist religious groups, you are afforded a level of security, a level of privilege, and people are often scared of you. I mean, I was doing some reading about, people being excluded from kitchens if they weren't eating halal food, about being flogged. It's absolutely disgusting. And that shows that a lot of these people are using Islam and are using their religion to basically have a free ride in prison. And I think where that problem lies and where there are large populations of religious groups, I do think there does need to be more prison staff because, as Sean said, the problem is control. The staff clearly don't have control over the prisoners, so we need more of the staff.
Amy Nicol, we've got to toughen up our prisons, don't we?
No, we need to do the exact opposite. And
what do you mean?
Exactly what Dominic Raab said is just classically Tory dehumanising.
But what are you saying? Are you against prisons?
So one of the biggest issues facing the prison population, when they leave prison, they can't get employed straight away. They're not eligible for universal credit. They have to apply for it. So there's a gap. And most of them, a massive percentage of them, will end up unemployed and homeless. And this is an issue. And if you centre these dehumanising terms on them, prison leavers, what was the thing? Don't call it a cell, not a room. Do you know what made me feel really uncomfortable was the way that you went self-esteem. Like, who needs that? That's precisely
what, for a murderer? For a rapist?
Because Dan, that is a minority of the prison population.
For a paedophile?
That is a minority of the prison population.
I think
these are mainly. So I've actually got. So you've got 30%. Smaller violent crimes under 6 months sentencing. 16% drugs offences. 9% theft. 9% robbery. Most people.
Okay, but what are you saying? What are you proposing?
I'm saying.
What are you proposing? Do you not believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons. I don't believe in prisons.
But at all?
No. I believe that the people you've mentioned, those really people that put the society and community at risk, of course.
Drug dealers?
I don't.
Dan, I have to say something, Amy. This is classic lefty wrongness. One about the victims. Yeah. There is no such thing as low-level crime if you've been a victim of that crime. And hold on, the big thing about our justice system is you pay your penance and you're no longer a prisoner. And that is very important because it means you could be accepted back into society. It means that people don't take the law into their own hands because they feel like there's penance being paid. If we lose that link, it means you have no respect for people who are paying taxes, who are victim of crime, and people start to take the law.
So, Amy, what do you... I'm genuinely... I'm stunned. Okay. I'm completely stunned. But I'm actually trying to understand where you expect to put people who have mugged someone, have beaten someone up, who've raped someone. Where do they go?
Hang on a minute. If it wasn't a nonsense, then crime rates would have gone down.
OK, what's your solution then?
As the prison population
what's your solution,
goes
Amy?
up,
you get rid of prisons,
crime
what's your solution?
Rates go up.
Give me
also,
your solution.
Do you know something else?
Just give me your solution.
OK, my solution is a lot of it would be done in the community. A lot of it would be done through restorative justice, through counselling, through education, through getting them ready for employment and retraining them to be members of society. Also, my solution is to not have...
What, they stay in their home?
Do not have... Basically, this is like pumping a body full of poison and then being surprised when the body gets sick. Society...
Dominique, save me here.
Look, Amy, I think you are coming from, a compassionate place, but it's just absolutely ridiculous. The whole point of prison is it's supposed to be a punishment.
It is not a deterrent at all.
Wrong. So there should be an element of punishment, but there should also, of course, be an element of rehabilitation, which is why prisoners are already able to sit GCSEs.
The point of prison
qualifications,
is not
gain vocational skills in order for them to obtain employment once they're out. When it comes to the paedophiles, the rapists and whatever, I don't think we're actually harsh on them enough. I think they should be doing hard labour and be given soup every day if it was up to me.
Soup's quite nice.
You've missed one of the points of prison as well. Prison is a deterrent.
It's not.
Let me tell you why.
It doesn't do anything for crime rate.
It is a deterrent, and I'll tell you why. The thing that pushes crime the most, we're here in London now, record levels of crime under...
Sadiq Khan's lawless London.
Why is Sadiq Khan's London so lawless? Because people don't think they'll be caught.
Yes.
They don't think there'll be any punishment. The biggest deterrent to crime is the idea that you will have to pay for that crime.
No,
what's the level? What's the level when you think someone should go to prison? So if you rape someone, if you beat someone up, if you burgle someone's house, when do you go to prison? Never?
In my head, what I would like to do, what reduces crime, is by raising living standards, increasing connection, increasing community.
OK, Amy, but no matter what living standards are, there's still going to be people who rape people, there's still going to be people who assault people, there's still going to be people who murder people. What happens to them? What happens to them in your utopia?
Those people go to prison. And prison isn't overcrowded.
So prison does exist?
For a very select few people who are a harm and danger to the community.
Let me quickly help you. If you really want to help prisoners and reduce crime in this country, the best place to start would be with people's mental health.
Exactly. And you hate isolation. You said how harmful it is, how awful it is, and you want to isolate loads of millions of... Well, I think it's 80,000 people in this country. Isolate them and then be surprised when their mental health deteriorates and they reoffend.
Have you seen some of the prison pictures? There was one picture that I saw with some prisoners taking a picture with a piece of steak. On a phone? Like, you get phones, you get drugs, you get loads of stuff in jail.
It's a
You're not
school for
isolated.
crime. You leave it
free
and
for
you
all
reoffend.
in a lot of those jails.
Final word.
Just a lot
of
of my thinking came from this because I did actually work for a brief time in a probation office. So I'm not talking from ignorance here. I'm talking from my own experience.
From my knowledge, you get phones, you get drugs, you get loads of stuff in jail. Seriously.
Yeah, so it doesn't work.
Well, no, Amy doesn't want jails. Amy doesn't want jails. Look, we'll pick up on this another time. But I, for one, am delighted that we're seeing far less face coverings being worn in public. But unfortunately, for one set of animals, their face muzzle hell is just getting started. That's right, innocent cows could soon be masked up in the latest loony scheme to combat climate change. The devices convert the methane burped by bovines into the water and carbon dioxide, and according to manufacturer Zalp, they could cut emissions by 53%. Now, the new technology has received the royal seal of approval from Greta Thunberg-loving Prince Charles, who awarded the designers £50,000 after he was part of a judging panel for the Royal College of Art. I suppose the upside is the vegan brigade won't be able to whine about the environmental damage caused by cows anymore, and I can go back to enjoying eating my steak in peace, maybe.
Yes, please.
There's been no peace, however, for those irritating eco-loons at Just Stop Oil, who were seen destroying petrol pumps at service stations off the M25 this morning. 35 protesters were arrested at Cobham services in Surrey and Clackett Lane services in Kent after they hammered, I just hate this, a display glass before filling up petrol pumps with spray paint. They also carried out their tried and tested stunt of gluing themselves to pump steins and the top of a lorry, proving they're as unimaginative as they are infuriating. Once again, police time is needlessly wasted, and here's what one of the emboldened eco-zealots had to say for herself.
And I'm doing this because currently the government doesn't care about our lack of futures. That inaction on the emergency, which is the climate crisis, is literally going to destroy lives in the next 10 to 20 years. It's going to be mass crop failure, mass drought, mass starvation, and because they're doing nothing, we are forced to cause disruption to make them listen.
I don't think I've ever seen so many tools at a police station. Amy DeCal, Sean Bailey, Dominic Samuels, thank you so much. But coming up, is it fair to ban 16 and 17-year-olds from getting married? My Superstar panel return to debate that at 10:30 plus. You'll get a first look at more of tomorrow's newspaper front pages. But next, he left one of the world's most successful bands after suffering horrific abuse at the hands of the lefty mob simply for expressing an interest in politics. Former Mumford & Sons musician turned podcaster Winston Marshall sits down with me to explain why he chose free speech over more gold discs and Grammys. That unmissable interview coming up in just 2 minutes.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's 2 questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GBNews.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back. Well, my next guest is best known as the banjoist and lead guitarist in one of the world's biggest bands. Winston Marshall was a founding member of Mumford & Sons and had 14 hugely successful years with the iconic folk rock band. During his time with Mumford & Sons, they released 2 chart-topping albums, won 2 Brits, a Grammy, and performed to hundreds of thousands of their adoring fans in countless sold-out arenas. But in March 2021, Winston found himself under attack from the cancel culture mob because he lauded a book investigating Antifa, written by Andy Ngo, the American journalist who was a guest on my show last year, actually. Posting about books was a theme of Winston's social media during the pandemic. It wasn't a new thing, but that tweet was met with hysterical and shocking abuse from the far left of the grandson of Holocaust survivors, who was ludicrously branded a fascist. After apologising and taking a leave of absence to protect his bandmates, Winston took the personal decision to permanently quit the band against his bandmates' wishes last June. He said he sacrificed doing what he loved to avoid self-censorship and so that he could speak freely about politics without leaving Marcus, Ben and Ted exposed to the viral mob's vicious assaults. But ironically, his voice outside Mumford & Sons has made him one of the world's most influential new commentators. He's now launched a brilliant new podcast with The Spectator, Marshall Matters, that explores taboo issues within the creative industries and has interviews with big-name guests like American Pie singer Don McLean. And I'm delighted to say that Winston Marshall joins me now. Winston, your case was one of the most egregious, one of the most shocking examples of the cancel culture mob in full force, because literally all you did was say that you'd read a book. That was it.
Well, firstly, thanks for having me on the show.
It's great to have you here.
And that was a very flattering introduction. I'm not sure I can agree that one of the world's most important commentators, far from it. But yeah, it was a completely bizarre scenario. As you said, I was tweeting about books, and one of the books was Andy Ngo's book that documents far-left extremism, and somehow it turned into a big story. It wasn't even, the tweet itself was flattering. I said it was an important book, and I thought it was because at the time I understood it to be the only book documenting far-left extremism in the States, and that he was a brave guy, and he certainly a brave guy. Not only had he been attacked beforehand, but in the period after my initial apology and before deciding to step away, leave the band, he was attacked again, and video footage of him being attacked in Portland came out on the internet. And when I saw that, I felt I've really not. It's not okay that I've apologised to these people, to these extremists, because that's what it felt like.
Because you felt like you were giving in?
Because I felt like I was participating in the lie that these people are doing good, and that lie runs deep in America, particularly. I'm not sure Antifa's really a thing here in England. They call themselves Antifa, but actually, if you look at their behaviour, by their fruits you will know them, and it's very much the behaviour of fascists. But you even had Biden in the election saying Antifa's just an idea, and these people have literally killed people in the States, and
it's organised.
It's organised, and they burnt down federal courthouses, and it's like absolutely shocking, repugnant behaviour that we're seeing, and it's not okay. So
no, but the idea was that if you call out far-left extremism, according to the liberal cancel culture mob, you must be a far-right extremist, which is what you were accused of, which is, of course, patently ridiculous, because there's nothing in your history, nothing in your interest, nothing in your comments to suggest that you're that at all.
Well, as you said in your introduction, my grandmother was a Holocaust survivor. It's ludicrous to put me in that category of things. But, and not only does social media sort of promote this binary thinking amongst all of us, and I've probably fallen prey to it occasionally myself, but it's word games, you know, Antifa. Well, if you're against Antifa, then you must be pro-far, which is absolutely not the case. But I guess that's a consequence of these short tweets and short thinking.
Isn't it a shame, though, that we can't have these conversations amongst celebrities? It feels to me that high-profile folk in the music industry, in the film industry, in the TV industry, and I know a lot of them, very often do have a controversial view, but they're simply too scared to express it because of exactly what happened to you.
Yeah, that's a good question. So it's my opinion, or from how I've seen it, is that the music industry is a very small industry, and I would say it's dominated by progressives. That's normal. I think in all industries, you're going to have if like-minded people are going to tend to have the same ideas. I imagine if you looked at the city and finance, you probably have more free marketers and conservatives. I imagine it's kind of normal. But in the music industry, there are certainly dissenters, and many of them have reached out to me privately. Some of them I'm now thrilled to be working with, and I hope I can come back to your show with these new projects, music projects, as they emerge in the future. But there are people who have the courage to stand up to these people. But it's
so you're going to form a new band? Is that what you're hinting at?
You'll have to invite me back.
That sounds exciting.
Yeah. In the meantime, I'm working on this podcast at The Spectator.
Yes, which is brilliant. I'm a listener.
Thank you. And I've had a variety of people, not just liberals, but progressives as well, and conservatives. Everyone's welcome. I'm a believer that you can have friends with people.
Just like on this show, I want to hear from all sides of the spectrum. Can you understand why some Mumford & Son fans were disappointed with the band? I know you have always been very positive about your bandmates, but there was a view that they didn't support you enough. They should have stood up for you more, and they should have made it completely clear that you could have stayed within the band and had differing political views.
I wanted to protect the band because I hit a hot button issue, and there are a few of these hot button issues. It might be Palestine, it might be the trans debate, and these issues do ignite the worst sides of the debates and people, and that was a regret of mine that I'd done that. It was an accident, but I didn't think it was fair on them for them to come under the bus with me. So I thought the best thing to do was to walk away.
Do you still have a positive relationship with them today?
I really want that band to be successful, and I'd hate for what I've done to bring them down. So I wish them nothing but the best.
Censorship in the music industry is becoming worse, though. I mean, it was interesting to look at the Spotify debate over Joe Rogan, where various high-profile artists believed that he should be deplatformed, that he should be banned from Spotify.
I mean,
and some of them even took their music off Spotify.
It was a really bizarre scenario, and it was Neil Young, Crosby, Stills and Nash. It was a few months ago now. Joni Mitchell. And
these people who you would have imagined would have been pro-freedom of speech.
Well, their whole careers are based on the idea of expression, and they were against freedom of expression, it seems. Now, to be clear, they weren't arguing against Joe Rogan's First Amendment rights or anything, but they said that if Spotify didn't remove them from Joe Rogan from Spotify, that they themselves would come down. So it's not just them exercising their freedom of association. They're specifically asking for Joe Rogan to be removed. So they're targeting someone else.
Job.
Yeah, well, they're specifically targeting him or speech that they dislike to be removed. So it's not just freedom of association. It's a culture against freedom of expression.
Which is exactly what we saw with Netflix and Netflix employees with Dave Chappelle as well. It's happening more and more often in your world, your industry.
Yeah, and I hope that there will be a turning point.
When does that come, and how does that come? Is it more people being like you and saying, you know what, the Grammys were great, the big concerts were great, but actually I'm going to have to take a stand, to hell with what it does to my reputation in the industry?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I don't know the answer to that. I think, on the one hand, you'd hope that if there's a critical mass of people that go, actually, enough's enough, this is ridiculous, then you might have a change in that culture. But as I said earlier in the interview, I'm not convinced that within those industries, let's say Hollywood or the music industry, that there is ever going to be a critical mass, because I think that they might be majority progressive industries. And so I do think it's a problem of progressivism or contemporary progressivism of this idea of shutting down speech and being against freedom of expression.
No, I completely agree, which is why what you did was particularly brave, so you will be continuing to speak out now.
Well, now that I've given up so much for it, I'm not going to shut up.
And do you feel confident enough to do that?
I'm building my confidence up, slowly. As you said before it started rolling, you invited me on back in June last year, and it took me however many months it is to finally pluck up the courage.
10 months later, you made it in. I got you in the end. Well, no, look, I've been really impressed, Winston. You've done incredible things. I think more people in the music industry, more people in the TV industry, more people in the movie industry need to speak up, because, of course, there is going to be a power in numbers. I understand what you're saying, that a lot of them are progressive, but at the same time, there are many, many folk there, because I see the messages that I receive, who are against the censorship but are too afraid because of the consequences. So I do hope that that changes.
Yeah. Well, actually, that was what was so inspiring to me is when I did announce that, or not inspiring, worrying to me, I should say. When I did leave the band, I published a letter explaining why, and I got quite literally thousands of letters from people saying they couldn't speak because they worried they would lose their job, lose friends, and for most people, they can't afford to lose their job or their careers because, firstly, they can't. They've got mortgages, they've got families to support. That's a big deal, and not only that, careers are hard to build up. They take decades, and why throw that away? And maybe, and you might argue, well, just keep quiet. What's the big deal? But if you keeping stum and you keep nodding along to things you disagree with, that wears away at the soul, and that's not a good place for us to be in as a society.
Perfect point to end it. Winston Marshall, host of the Marshall Matters podcast and former member of Mumford & Sons. Pleasure to have you tonight.
Thank you, Dan.
Now, coming up, should social media sites remain politically neutral to regain the public's trust? Rapper, author and podcast host Zubi breaks down what's been a seismic week online and uncancelled at 10:40. The next in the Media Buzz, is it fair to ban 16 and 17-year-olds from getting married? Plus, Just Stop Oil's eco-zealots have been causing more chaos. My superstar panel return to tackle all of that next.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GBNews.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GBNews.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GBNews.
And let's return to tomorrow's news tonight now in our media buzz. Lots of front pages have now been delivered. The Eye leads with reports of new sexual harassment claims hitting Parliament as female MPs demand an end to assault, misogyny and misconduct. Attorney General Suella Braverman said only a small minority of men in politics behave like animals, quote, as demands grow for the Conservative MP allegedly caught watching pornography in Parliament to be sacked. The Independent alleges the Conservative Party is failing to act on the Tory MP who allegedly watched porn while at work in Parliament. Elsewhere, the paper also carries a picture of England cricketer Ben Stokes, who was today announced as the next Test captain. The Daily Telegraph reveals some 8,000 British troops will be sent to Eastern Europe for military exercises in a bid to deter further Russian aggression. Pictured alongside that story is the first Brit killed in action in Ukraine, 36-year-old Scott Sibley. A friend described him as the bravest person he knew. The Guardian covers how Joe Biden has defied Putin's threats by doubling aid for Ukraine. The US president has asked Congress for a further £26 million to help the war-stricken country. The Times now, under new NHS guidelines, millions of patients with arthritis will be told to exercise and lose weight instead of taking painkillers, in a move that could save the health service billions of pounds. And, this is exciting for me, it could be the end of the BBC licence fee after a government white paper said it would be under review in coming months and alternatives would be considered. Hallelujah to that. More in the Media Buzz now with tonight's superstar panel, the political commentator Dominic Samuels, the former Tory London mayoral candidate Sean Bailey, and the author and broadcaster Amy Nicole. Now, at 16, you can say I will to a job or to joining the army, but not to getting married, at least not for much longer. That's after the passing of a backbench bill to raise the minimum age at which couples can tie the knot to 18. Minors in England and Wales could previously get married at 16 or 17 with parental consent, which campaigners had warned left some children open to being coerced into marriage. But now adults who facilitate underage unions could face up to 7 years in jail and a fine under the law. Conservative MP Pauline Latham, who introduced the bill last summer after years of campaigners calling for it, said it would transform the life chances of many girls. But is it stripping away the rights of those who are legally free from parental control and on the cusp of adulthood, Amy Nicole?
No, I actually think quite the opposite. I think it's giving rights to those that were being coerced into marriages, because this has been campaigned for a really, really long time by people who did a lot of research into the prevalence of child brides in this country, which is quite shocking, actually. I hadn't really thought too much about it before today, but when I looked at the information, it made total sense that this is actually really a long time coming and it's really important progress. So I was really happy to see this.
What, because you don't believe in marriage at all?
Pardon? Well, you're not bringing up my untimely divorce, are you?
I thought that's what you were referring to.
I know. Just to clarify, I wasn't a child bride.
But you were young.
Although I do think it's interesting that
How old were you when you
this
tried to
law would say, you can drink. No, you can get married, but you can't drink. Yeah. But I think I had to drink heavily.
But how old were you when you got married?
Well, I was like, I don't know. I don't want to talk about my ill-fated
But you were young.
marriage.
You were
young.
young.
I wasn't that young. I was old enough to know better. I was a mother when I got married, not to the dad. Anyway, this is a whole...
Just turned into
Sean Bailey, you're a big believer in marriage.
But I don't believe in marriage. It's a load of rubbish, isn't it?
That's what I was getting
okay,
at. You just don't like marriage, full stop.
No, I think it can be good for tax reasons and things like that. But ultimately, because all it means now is stay married until you don't want to be married anymore. It doesn't really mean anything.
Yeah, that's what our culture has turned into.
Whereas Sean Bailey, you're, I believe, a big supporter of the Marriage Foundation, and you really believe in marriage.
I'm a big supporter of the Marriage Foundation and marriage as an institution. If I told you something made people live longer, happier, less time in jail, less time in hospital, make more money, help their children's mental health, you'd say, what is this magic? And the answer is marriage.
Oh, that's happy marriage.
But it's a fact. It's a fact. Actually, even unhappy marriages, but that's a whole other thing.
Conflict in the home.
But that's a fact. But the point is, about this law in particular, I was slightly ambivalent about this because on one end, we're being forced to change our culture because other cultures are coming here and not behaving themselves. And the point I'd make is somebody who's going to force a 16-year-old to get married will wait until they're 18 and then force them to get married. There is better ways, I believe, using our legal system to make sure that these things don't happen. But this isn't devastating to marriage or our children. Our children will get over it.
Yeah, because they're effectively 16 and 17-year-old. What 16 and 17-year-old knows fully that they want to spend the rest of their lives with one person? Not many, because me being that age was not long ago.
But you could also say though that just as many 40-year-olds who get married end up divorcing.
I mean, you could, but I think it's
not
really...
about divorce, though.
Yeah, I think
it's about coercion.
Yeah, it's about the coercion, but it's also about looking at things in proportion. Do you really need to be married at 16 and 17? No. The likelihood is that a strong number of people from, the Islamic community, just going to put it out there, that's where it happens, are going to be forced into getting married at a very young age, and that should be stopped. So
I just wish we could work out an age for everything.
I think
because you've got Sturgeon in Scotland saying 16-year-olds should be able to become MPs and should be able to vote, and we know why, because she thinks that she's going to get more 16-year-olds who are going to vote for independence. But my point is, I just wish we could decide an age. Do you know what I mean? And if it's 18, fine. If it's 17, fine. If it's 16, fine. But let's just decide an age when you're considered an adult in this country and you can do everything.
The problem is, things have a different risk, don't they? So actually getting married at 16...
Well, there's quite a big risk of joining the army and losing your life for this country.
But getting married at 16 actually isn't that risky, because if you decided you weren't going to be married at 19, you just get divorced. Hold on. But having a baby at 16 is much more risky, and nobody would stop you doing that.
But then what happens when people from these cultures are forced into these marriages is they often are impregnated straight away, so they're effectively trapped inside the marriage.
Dominique's completely right, and the interesting thing about this is that actually, if this is a court going on, it's the parents that will get 7 years in prison. Prison, hate it.
Amy, well, I was just going to say, you've had some corkers tonight. Let's just completely change British society by axing marriage and axing prisons. That's Amy Nichol's utopia. That's Amy Nichol's utopia. Now, it's not often, by the way, I praise Emmanuel Macron, but I've got to hand it to him. Getting pelted with tomatoes 3 days after being re-elected to the presidency is a tricky feat to pull off. The Britain-hating politician was left exclaiming "Bonjour" after narrowly dodging produce on a chaotic visit to a town northwest of Paris. This wasn't a wise place to go, I have to tell you, because less than a quarter of residents voted for him in the first round of the election. Luckily, his advisors were on hand to protect the leader of one of Europe's most powerful countries with an umbrella. But to be fair, this wasn't just any umbrella, but an £8,000 Kevlar contraption. Is that right? Kevlar?
Is it? Yeah. Is it bulletproof? £8,000?
Who spends £8,000 on an umbrella?
Oh well, apparently it can repel knives, dogs, and acid.
Oh, OK.
But due to the attacker's dodgy aim, we're yet to find out how it holds up against salad ingredients. Amy Nicol, Sean Bailey, Dominic Samuels, do stand by, because coming up, it's Jamila versus Jacob Rees-Mogg, a pairing I never thought we would see in tonight's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. But next is ensuring political neutrality, the only way to get us to trust social media. Rapper, author and podcast host Zubi, he's uncancelled after we take a very quick look at what's coming up on Monday.
Coming up on Dan Wootton tonight, former Dancing on Ice judge and one of the few celebrities speaking out in support of vaccine freedom, Jason Gardner, exposes the toxic truth behind the Be Kind telly elite and reveals how his traumatic experiences forced him off-grid.
Plus, I'll sit down with Will Witt, the Gen Z conservative whose viral videos could be our best chance of saving our youth from wokeism. You'll also get plenty of unfiltered opinion from Neil Oliver, Positive Professor Carol Sikora, and my superstar panel. Daily Express columnist Carol Malone, senior reporter at the newspaper Benjamin Butterworth, and broadcaster and campaigner Lalani Dowding. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. But it's time now for Uncancelled. And this is where Britain's top commentators speak out on controversial issues without the fear of the cancel culture sweeping the rest of the media. And with hysterical leftists crying a litre of tears for each of the £35 billion Elon Musk spent buying Twitter, they'll soon need an arc to save themselves from their own whining. But they have their very own public meltdowns just exposed. I think they've actually exposed a bias problem that has forced the world's richest man to step in. And last night, Elon Musk delivered a slew of telling tweets outlining his intentions, the first of which referenced Donald Trump's newly launched Twitter rival. Musk said, "Truth Social, terrible name, exists because Twitter censored free speech." He then went further, writing in another message, "For Twitter to deserve public trust, it must be politically neutral," which effectively means upsetting the far right and the far left equally. So, Zubi, political neutrality on social media sounds perfectly reasonable to me. So what are the left so worried about?
Well, I think what's most interesting, Dan, is that the people who are screaming about this and ranting or raving, they are not afraid because they fear that they will be censored or that they will be deplatformed. They fear that people who question or challenge them will not be censored or deplatformed. So a lot of people have been telling on themselves this week the fact that political neutrality is even controversial and for people to have backlash against. They're essentially telling on themselves by admitting that they didn't believe that Twitter was previously politically neutral, nor that it should be.
Yeah, indeed. Indeed, because literally all Elon Musk has actually pledged to do is uphold the laws around freedom of expression and freedom of speech. I just cannot understand, Zubi, why it is some sort of highly controversial position.
Well, I think it's controversial because over a period of time, I've been on Twitter myself for 13 years, which is quite scary in itself. But over time, this platform and many others have become increasingly censorious. They have moved to deplatform people who primarily are on the right side of the political aisle, not exclusively people on the right side of the aisle, but this is something that slowly crept up more and more, especially around election times, especially in the USA. And so I think a lot of people have assumed that all of these big tech companies are essentially supposed to be political agents to some degree, that they're not supposed to be platforms of freedom of speech, that they're not supposed to be neutral. I think many people feel the same way about the world of music and entertainment. They feel the same about Hollywood. They feel the same about academia. They've gotten so used to this left-leaning bias, the concept of neutrality frightens them.
I know, which is just so disturbing. So disturbing to me because essentially what they're saying is they want a platform where views that they don't agree with are slapped down. And something really interesting has happened on Twitter this week, Zubi, and I've seen you tweeting about it too, and Donald Trump Jr. was tweeting about it, and Neil Oliver was tweeting about it too. All of a sudden, the three of you have started to gain loads of followers. And it seems like this is something that's happened to people who are considered at least not to be on the left of the political spectrum. Nigel Farage was talking about it earlier this week too. So is this a coincidence, Zubi? Or is this something Twitter has done? Or is it the fact that Conservatives are actually returning to Twitter now that Elon Musk has revealed that he will be taking control of the platform?
Let me tell you something really interesting, Dan. In the past 72 hours, since the announcement was made that Elon Musk is going to buy Twitter, I have gained 55,000 followers on Twitter in the past days.
I'm so jealous.
Yeah, 55,000. Now, you have to remember, in January last year, I actually lost 25,000 in a very short period of time. So my account has actually been throttled. And I noticed just 2-3 days ago, whenever the announcement was made, that those limitations instantly came off. There are people commenting who were saying that they hadn't seen my posts or many others for the past 2 years. There are also some people who are coming back to Twitter. So there has been a boost in the users, but a lot of people who were previously shadow banned or throttled, they no longer are.
Yes, so Zubi, explain to me that term shadow ban, because obviously we've got to acknowledge the fact, by the way, that about 75% of the population never use Twitter because it's a hellish hellscape of vile abuse on the whole. But the reason that it's really important, obviously, is because the journalists use it, the politicians use it. It is the platform that drives the news agenda internationally. So this term shadow banning, I hear it a lot. What does it mean?
Sure. So those people who are not on Twitter, that's very wise and intelligent of you.
Yes. You're living a happier life. You're living a happier life. Let me guarantee that.
Shadow banning is essentially when someone is not banned or deplatformed, but the algorithm is adjusted to turn down the volume on their account. This can mean that it is harder to search for them. You type in their name and it doesn't come up. This can mean that their tweets and their posts are artificially limited. So instead of going out to 1,000 people, we're going to turn that down so it only goes out to 400 people. There are all sorts of methods that they can use and things they can tweak in the algorithm very subtly behind the scenes that restrict somebody's reach. So it's not the same as an outright ban. It's more like turning down the volume on them.
But you know what? If you're gaining 55,000 followers, you must be very happy that Elon Musk has wrestled control of this platform back. Fascinating analysis, Zubi, the rapper, author, host of the Real Talk with Zubi podcast, and a social media Twitter sensation. My God. Now, time to reveal today's Greatest Britain Union jackass. My superstar panel are back. Dominique Samuels, who's your nominee for tonight's Greatest Britain?
Now, this may be a tad premature, we'll have to see, but I'm going to choose Home Secretary Priti Patel because in light of the Rwanda scheme being announced, which has been very controversial, there have been 0 channel migrant crossings in 9 days, so it seems to be working.
Yeah, the signs are very, very good so far. Sean Bailey, your Greatest Britain.
My Greatest Britain is the Marriage Foundation for 10 years of research and support to the institution of marriage, which is the cornerstone of any civilised society.
And Amy Nicole.
If you get it right. If you get it wrong, it is not. Anyway, my...
I thought you didn't want to talk about your own marriage, for God's sake. You can't stop bringing it up.
There's nothing more damaging than a bad marriage. Oh, my God, I'm bringing out the daddy issues as well. OK, my nomination is Prince Charles because he has been, this week, proved himself a bovine gimp mask progressive with his fantastic little endorsement of an invention that will reduce carbon emissions.
So you want to put...
Save the planet and make the cows
So you spent 2 years telling me I've got to wear a damn muzzle. Now that we've finally got rid of them, you want to cause animals to...
Yeah, but I do think it'd be more effective if you just shoved it on the other end. But for now, we'll leave it on the
cruel and
front.
unusual. I'm going to go with...
you love Prince Charles.
I'm going to go with Dominique Samuels, actually, and Priti Patel, because this is a great start to the Rwanda scheme. Union jackass time. Now, Dominique, your nominee.
My union jackass is Jamila Jamil, who, in light of Elon Musk announcing that he was buying the company Twitter, she declared that she was leaving and it was her last tweet. I mean, we're yet to see
Don't
her
ever
actually
come
delete
back.
her account. But
Jamila Jamil, you just walk off that platform and do not come back.
Please.
We're not missing you. Sean Bailey, your nominee.
My union jackass is a Just Stop Oil activist who smashed up 2 petrol stations on M25 in rush hour. They're so self-indulgent and they're beginning to turn people against the idea that we should protect the environment.
I mean, how revolting is this? It actually makes me physically sick. These people are scumbags. They should be locked up. It's criminal damage and it's eco-terrorism in action. And I am sick of people sitting back and allowing this lawless activity to go on across Britain.
it doesn't work. And this morning, the tailbacks, the sheer confusion, stopping people getting to work. People are losing patience, they're losing sympathy.
They are a disgrace.
And of course, they're wasting
They are an
police
absolute
time.
disgrace.
Absolute
and it's
disgrace.
very quickly not becoming just lawless London, we're becoming lawless Britain. Amy Nicole, your nominee.
And lawless Prime Minister. Mine is...
Well, and a lawless leader of the opposition and a lawless First Minister in Scotland, just
Look,
so
we've got to
because we're not
finish
gonna be
this show in
hypocritical.
2 minutes, Dan. Let's wind it up. So my nomination is the frog in a suit, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for neglecting his own job as Brexit Minister, a job that he invented, to leave passive-aggressive notes about working from home.
Oh, I loved these notes. If you'd nominated him for Greatest Britain, he would have won. But Uni and Jackass-wise, I've got to go for the Just Stop Oil.
Yeah, of course.
Charlatans. It just makes me so mad. Thank you so much to my superstar panel tonight, Dominique Samuel, Sean Bailey, Amy Nicole. Thank you so much for your company, your loyalty, your brilliant feedback all week. I'm back Monday at 9.
Good evening, Alex Deacon here with your latest weather update from the Met Office. Another dry day for the vast majority tomorrow, probably a bit sunnier for many of us, and as a result, feeling a little warmer as well. This area of high pressure has been controlling our weather for most of this week. There are signs of weather fronts getting closer for the weekend. More on that in a moment. But for the time being, high pressure promising a dry night for the vast majority. Just the small chance of 1 or 2 showers over the Northern Isles and perhaps later in the night across the southeast of England. Certainly eastern parts of England keeping a fair bit of cloud, but for many we'll have largely clear skies. And again, it will be pretty fresh in the morning. Temperatures well down into single figures, and in rural parts of northern England, Northern Ireland, southern Scotland, there will be a frost, maybe as low as -2 or -3. So yes, a cold start to Friday, but for quite a few of us it will be a sunny start to what will be a fine spring day. Again, eastern England's mostly staying cloudy, particularly East Anglia and increasingly across the southeast with maybe 1 or 2 showers, but also eastern Scotland seeing some cloud bubbling up and the odd shower here and there. And again, eastern areas, temperatures struggling a little bit, 12, 13 at best, but in the sunshine further west, many places up to 16, 17, maybe 18 Celsius in western Scotland. Quite quickly, temperatures dropping away through tomorrow evening. So again, turning quite cold as we head into the weekends with largely clear skies and a touch of frost. We are going to see a change for Scotland and Northern Ireland on Saturday. More clouds spilling in here with a little bit of rain, particularly by the afternoon, getting through the central belt to Northern Ireland. Late in the day across Northern England, but for most of England and Wales, Saturday is going to be a fine day, dry and fine. And after a chilly start, again, some good spells of sunshine lifting the temperatures in the mid to high teens. Again, it will be a little cooler in parts of the east. But that wet weather coming into the far north later on Saturday is from this area of low pressure, which will sink south and so bring a cloudier day on Sunday for England and Wales. And there will be 1 or 2 showers.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you.